Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to Astrology Today with Jeff Harman. I'm Ella, Jeff's assistant. Wonderful to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us. I so look forward to our Fridays together, and so does Jeff. We love sharing the astrology with you all. So Jeff's going to go right into our current events and hot topics. And our brief topic for this evening is about the birth chart and how it's a reflection of our earthly karma. Such a beautiful subject and so interesting. So let's get started this evening, Jeff.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, there's a lot of stuff happening in the world. Sad news on that Titan sub that was going down to the Titanic. You know, actually, we have a documentary that I wanted to on the Titanic. I did the astrology, the time that the Titanic set sail. And I have to tell you, it's so accurate. It's creepy what the time of the sailing, in other words, the maiden voyage of the Titanic showed. I actually did a whole documentary on that. And it was very, very interesting how accurate it was. It actually showed the actions of the captain would sink the ship. And of course, we know from history, it certainly happened that way. So that's some sad news on that. The good news is they didn't suffer long. I can tell you that. According to all the reports, they were probably out of there instantly and didn't go through much pain. So if we're all going to go, I guess that's one way to go. Not a way I'd like to go, but anyways. So the other thing in the news that's really big, and we've been mentioning this for a long time. And, you know, I know a lot of the naysayers have said, that's not going to happen. But Biden looks like he's getting more and more and more dirt. There's these IRS whistleblowers, even though it looked like the Department of Justice just had pretty much whitewashed everything with the Hunter Biden scandal. It's now blowing back in their face, where they're actually proving with these IRS whistleblowers that not only was Biden present at a meeting, but now they're actually showing that there's bank accounts, more bank accounts showing up. So they're really digging up some dirt on him. And like I said, the inauguration chart of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris didn't look bad, it looked horrible. And I'd be really surprised if this presidency goes to the distance. And we're going to see. And I think the fireworks, the astrology shows on the United States coming up this fall is going to mirror that. I think we're going to see a lot of crazy stuff. And of course, you know, they're all, you know, pushing hard and strong for Biden to make it in the, run for president for the Democratic nomination. I think, you know, they're going to find, even though Robert Kennedy Jr. would be certainly a good guy to get in there, he's at least got some common sense and talking some truth. I wouldn't be surprised if they dust off Gavin Newsom at the last minute. They make a...
know that's going to happen. Come on.
He's the perfect boy wonder.
You know it's going to happen.
We call him Boy Wonder because he's exactly like Billy Clinton's model was, where, you know, just everything is, you know, horrible, but yet don't blame me, you know. So, it's going to be.
Well, we live in California, so we know the truth. We know what it is. We know what he's up to and what's going on.
Yeah, I've been hearing from several people that they're double billing people on taxes because they're really broke. I know we just got double billed, and I checked with my accountant. I said, wait a minute, we paid this, you know? He says, yeah, you did. So it's interesting stuff, you know. They'll do anything to keep the needles and the homeless supplied. It's absolutely insane here. It's such a shame. What a beautiful state. I love this place. The canyons and the agriculture and the beauty of the terrain is just stunning. And again, we're way north of Los Angeles, so it's way up in the beauty of the mountains and the canyons. And, you know, I would say the terrain here is some of the most beautiful in the world. And it's just a shame that the politics had to go the way it did. So that's that. And then the other thing I would say is clearly, you know, we're seeing so much cover up and so much coercion, and not to go into this every podcast, but it's really mirroring what the United States shows. I mean, we've got this incredibly manipulative energy on the United States right now. The Neptune is opposing Neptune in the United States. And again, that won't happen again for another 180 years. And, clearly this is a time of subterfuge, trickery, where they're blowing smoke up our rear ends and telling us it's fog outside, So clearly crazy times. And what do we hear about? Even more technology. AI is taking over. AI is everywhere. And of course, this is this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction ushering in this new high-tech era. So we're clearly in it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's what's interesting about the Neptune is Neptune also represents spirituality, though, doesn't it? So we kind of have an opportunity to tap into that while this Neptune is doing what it's doing.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it does. If you look at the glyph of Neptune, it's the crescent of the moon over the cross. And I often point this out in one of my favorite diagrams, which I'll put on the screen. It's really the portal between, you could say, the spiritual world and this perception of reality that is often called Kala Purusha or Maya or all of our perceptions of the reality of our structures of the way we look at the world, which is really not 100% linear. The lower conscious mind is really built up of a lot of, you could say, deductive reasoning. And also, you could say our perception of reality, which is based on what we believe. And that's a very dangerous thing in some ways and always good to question. So Neptune can be both trickery and subterfuge, but it can also be a connection to the higher self if you're truly connecting to it. So it's a very elusive and a very interesting planet. I'm glad you brought that up. So,
yeah, definitely. Definitely. So what's interesting is that does tie into our topic for this evening, right? How our earthly karma is just mapped out in the birth chart.
It is. And it's interesting. I love Nadi astrology and Vedic astrology because belief is not required. A lot of people today, they look at, the ascendant, the moon, and the sun as the big three. But in Vedic astrology, it's not like that at all. It's a totally different viewpoint. The viewpoint is that we were tied into the body at first breath. And it's really our karmic journey. The astrology may be us rather than we are the astrology. And there's three major components of karma. And one is the free will that we all have during this lifetime. They call it agami karma. It's kind of a strange word. And then there's also the collective karmas. And these aren't just our karmas, but they say it's tied in with the people we're born from, which is obviously our parents, the siblings, if we have any, and of course, the interactions we have throughout our life with all the people we have relationships with, both good and ill. So it's a really interesting whole quagmire to look at the phases in astrology. Today was last couple of days really been hard for me because I had some very challenging transits and it just physically wiped me out. I've had that happen most of my life where I just get certain times I'd be really wiped out. And that shows in my birth chart. Remember, you just had a really tough transit and you were so wiped out you couldn't hardly walk across the room. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, I remember.
Yeah, but you do. And I was the same way. What's that?
You don't forget those things.
Oh, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, and we all go through this respectively. And it's really interesting because you don't need to believe in astrology to be aware of it. And, my mother got me into this stuff years ago, way back in the 70s. She tried to get medical astrology to be acknowledged by some of the allopathic doctors. And, good luck on that one. But I actually have a book that she gave me. It was from the 1940s where a whole collection of doctors, allopathic doctors, tried to put out an encyclopedia. And it really had a lot of references to various astrological aspects. And this dates all the way back to the medieval times, the Egyptian times, and of course, many people may know of Ayurvedic astrology, where you can actually see that there are karmic traits, of course, today we would call them genetic, which they are genetic in the science, but they're embedded in things that we're processing out through karma. They actually say every breath we take, the karma is being dissipated through the chakras. See, we start out at the crown chakra, we move all the way down to, the root chakra, which is where the sexual reproductive organs are. And they actually say this is some of the principles behind many different techniques in yoga, is to unlock these points and release them. And, we're so far removed from this in modern society because we're all focused on money. We're all focused on, our linear tasks and survival of everyday life. And this ancient knowledge is really profound because it makes us look at life in a completely different way, and I think a lot healthier way in many instances. It's certainly, I think, a way to maybe parallel your life with more conscious awareness.
Oh gosh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that karma, it's almost like, well, we're calling it our earthly karma, what we have to bear here on earth. And we're all going through something, every life form, right? We see the animals going through, we're going through it, plant life, every form is going through something. And it's so interesting. It's almost like, some people, I've talked to some people and they really feel like they've just been punished. They're being punished going through their lives. And you've talked to a lot of people who have had such a hard time. But when you break it down and really look at the birth chart and try to tap into that energy, those lessons, because I truly believe they are lessons. They are things that we must go through here. We must go through them.
That's right.
It's not that it makes it easier, but you start to understand your life in a different way. You start to look at your life.
You look at it from a different perspective, right? Maybe there's another cause here that's going on that's far deeper than what we're just directly plugging into. Like, here's a good example. Many times, and I do this stuff every day, and I'm really blessed to be able to do that, where I'll see, well, oh my God, what happened to you at 3 years old? And I'll find, oh my God, the parents got divorced, or I was adopted. I had one individual who had a really severe medical condition that happened right at about 3 or 4 years old. Of course, it can happen at any age. And, she was left almost completely paralyzed, and it's still in a wheelchair in her 50s now. So I see this all the time where there's either energies that come in that are good or ill. And I love to point out the good ones. That's one of the things I'm always doing in readings, is looking for progressions and transits, particularly the positive ones. You can actually see when ancient old karmas that may have been with you several lifetimes are about ready to release. And this is amazing stuff. I actually had something happen to me about 25 years ago, and I knew it was coming. And I actually had a clearing done on me at that time. And I literally saw 3 disincarnate souls get up out of my aura and leave. And I look for this kind of stuff when I do clearings on people or places, is what is releasing on this particular person. I had a motorcycle accident in 1978. I could have set my watch to when it happened. It was primary directed Mars conjuncting Mercury. Car pulled right out in front of me, hit me head on. I flew over the windshield and, thank God, landed in a grassy, muddy ditch. And I broke my ankle, did not have a helmet on. Of course, back in the 70s in the Midwest, you didn't have helmet laws. And next thing I know, I wake up in the hospital and I hear the heart monitor and they're casting my foot. And the doctor says, you've got to stay here. You've got a bad concussion. I said, no, I'm going home tonight. And I did. And I actually did, but I passed out getting in the wheelchair. I did have a concussion. But it was amazing because, back then in the 70s, I was really just beginning to grasp astrology. That was, right when we were transitioning from BC, before computers, to, on computers. We're going from on hand. And I didn't have the capability back then to accurately calculate my progressions like I do today. And, the last 30, 40 years has been a stunning acceleration of computer capability for astrologers. And of course, with Zoom and other, video recording things, it's just so wonderful for people in readings, because now they get to watch these things back and forth, and I can show them right exactly when these trigger points are happening in their lives. And then they get the booklet, which shows that as well. So it's really interesting information. It's like even me today, I was so wiped out. I actually refused to drive my vehicle the last 2 days. And the reason why is I knew the transits I had going on. I had really malefic transits with Mars aspecting Mercury and Uranus and all that happy stuff. I'll spare you the details. But these are the things I look for. And I'm always warning people in readings, be careful here. You've got energies coming in that are very frenetic, and that doesn't mean you'll have an accident. What it means is if you're not paying attention or you're doing business as normal, you could. And see, just the awareness of that changes. It's like the example with you. I think the fact that you knew you had those malefic transits coming in really, I think, changed your outlook on it. Instead of panicking, going, oh my God, I'm going to die, you just realize, wow, this is really strong. And you got through it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, definitely. Definitely. I'm wondering now, you're talking about the disincarnate souls, and I'm wondering how that those disincarnates tie into our karma, because they do come in on us. So that's part of our karma too, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And that's some very mysterious and deep stuff. The Shar Hagilgam talks about that. Some of the Vedantic documents, the Bhagavata Puranas talk about that. Is really interesting stuff where there's these waves of souls that come through here. And we apparently keep reincarnating until the etheric energy known as karmas dissipate, both of good and ill. And this is really interesting stuff because many people will be familiar with spirit attachment. And I've mentioned many books on our podcast about this stuff. Really an area to be aware of, because I have found this is probably one of the primary issues that affect many people at some time in their lives. And many psychiatrists and paranormal researchers have found this, as well as psychologists. And I can tell you, my experience is this is a very prevalent thing where souls get trapped or they don't even know that they're passed away. And often they will lurk towards the light of a living being and they will embed themselves. Now that's known in the modern nomenclature as possession, which it is, but there's many forms of that. There's many layers of that too, or degrees of that. Certain types of things may embed very deeply in the aura and even right to the point of the physical body. And other times it's just etherically on the outside. Think of a whale going through the ocean and barnacles latching onto it. It's almost like a tick burrowing into a hound, So it's the deeper they get, the more I think the effect is. And many different people have different strengths in their aura. A lot of people can take it. So this is deep stuff. And yes, that also shows up in the progressions, transits, doshas, in the Nadi, and also the tropical astrology. Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff.
So amazing. Yep. I know it shows up. And also, that's where you really start to understand the power of the planets, right? Because you were telling me that I just missed being born with a Kalasarpa yoga because my mom broke it. My mom, the moon representing my mom. And It's so interesting how planets will come in and help us and save us. Like Jupiter, what a magnificent and magical planet. Many times comes in and breaks various things.
Yeah, various karmas. Yeah. Well, I would. Karmas. That's right. I would actually say it backwards. I don't think the planets save us at all. I think our karma saves us. I really do. I think the astrology is not us. I always say the astrology is the transmitters of the etheric energy of the soul into the physical body. Almost think of satellites going around, and these satellites can communicate millions and billions of signals down to Earth, right? So any way you cut this, the planets act like that. So there is just a multitude of karmic energies and interactions going on with all of us souls, both incarnate and disincarnate. And the celestial matrix is really what transmits that. And I think the fixed stars do as well. It's far more complex than I think anyone in astrology will ever be able to fully unravel. But I have to say, my favorite type of astrology is the Vedic and the Nadi astrology because it looks at it from that perspective. And that, in my opinion, is a way healthier way to look at astrology, is the astrology is not us. We may be the reason the astrology happened, meaning that And the religions tried to, I think, paint that picture is that we are the ones responsible by our actions and our karmas, because there is those three types of karma. You've got karmas you have to experience. Those are the collective karmas. They call them sanchita karmas. Then you have karmas that become ripe at certain times through certain progressions and certain astrological configurations in your birth chart. And let me tell you, they really release that. Those blow my mind when those kind of things happen. Then you have free will. And that's the other karma that is you're creating in this lifetime by the way you react to things and other people and the karma we create and the karma we do. So very interesting things. Again, us Westerners, when we hear the word karma, we always get a little queasy. All right, it's always got to be bad. But it also can be very divine and very good. This is where many of the ancient terms of, doing a wonderful thing for someone or helping them. Some people call it a mitzvah. Some people call it a good deed, the good Samaritan. These kinds of things, helping each other out, really creates a lot of etheric lines of good as well. And all the trickery and subterfuge, that creates karma as well. So everything that we do seems to have like these silver cords attached to them of karmas that keep going with the soul. And the real driving force here seems to be the soul itself. That's the one that's driving, I think, when the astrology happens, when we're incarnated. And they say the angels actually pick that before we're even born. That whole, you could say, template of events that we think is just happenstance in our lives. You look at the diversity of people being born. Some people, they have very simple lives. It never changes. Same, parents, same, environments all their life. And then they pass away really real simple, easy lives. Other people, it's a roller coaster ride. And it's shown in the chart. I see it's shown every in the chart. Time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's what I love about astrology so much, is that we do have such a deep connection to it. And if we really look at it and look at our birth charts and study it, it kind of guides us through this life. That's how I feel. I feel like it's helping me get through this life. I mean, I know it might sound crazy, but I really do feel that way. I really do.
Yeah. Well, and that's great. And I find a lot of people really do. I always kind of live a life of duality. I love having my free will and using my deductive, logical, common sense reasoning. I love that. And then I like checking in with the astrology. I don't live my life by astrology. I live it in parallel with it, which I think is because we have the right to free will, and a lot of people think, astrology is predicting the future. Every move you make is going to be controlled by the planets. It's not true. That's my personal opinion. But I do think the transits and progressions, again, I liken karma to like being on a road. If you're on a country road and nobody's around and you can fly and go with no, stop and go lights or stop signs, that is a life that is very karmically free. If you have a karma that's very intertwined, like a Gordian knot, you're going to find that's like being in traffic, and a lot of diversities will come at you. And it's shown in the chart. It really is. It's quite amazing. The parents are shown, the siblings are shown, and the evolution of the soul is shown. You can even see when certain souls are likely to ascend at the end of the lifetime, and others are more likely to keep coming back because they're laden with deep karmic energies that need to be dissipated out. And some of them may be too deep to be dissipated in one lifetime. And they actually say the angels dole this stuff out in a way that the soul can handle it. It's kind of like the old saying, you never give it anything you can't handle. So maybe that's true, because it sure seems to be in the Nadi astrology.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're all here handling it, right? And I think, I know I've been doled out a lot, and I know you have, and I'm sure everyone watching has. We're getting our fair share. Let's just put it that way. But,
everyone gets to go through what I call the karmic spanking machine. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and in a sense, it's a true blessing that we're here experiencing it all.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that always gives me a little pleasure is when I'm speaking to someone who's really going through a rough time and they become very depressed or they're feeling like they want to end their life or something like that. I'm always glad to be able to give them some insights into, hey, this thing's going to end here. You need to be strong and extract what the lesson is out of this, because they actually say in those cases, you grow. The hard stuff makes us grow. And, that's karma unfolding.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much. And thank you all so very much for joining us. Please leave your questions and your comments below. Have a beautiful week, and we'll see you next Friday.